In the Shropshire countryside lies the impressive ruins of Buildwas Abbey. This abbey can trace its origins back to the early 12th century and has seen its fair share of troubles over the hundreds of years. Plague, kidnapping and murder would upset the spectral balance, and the spirits of those troubled souls still linger within the ruins. On the 8th of August 1135, Roger de Clinton, the Bishop of Coventry and Lichfield, issued a charter formally founding Buildwas Abbey. The first abbot was called Ingenulf, and the monastery was dedicated to the Virgin Mary and St. Chad. In 1138, King Stephen confirmed the abbey's foundation, and the monastery attracted patronage of powerful local families. Despite this, Buildwas was a small and poor monastery, and the monks probably worshipped and lived in temporary wooden buildings for as long as 20 years after the foundation of their house. In 1147, all Savignatic monasteries, Buildwas included, were absorbed into a much larger Cistercian order. 8 years later, a talented and energetic man called Ranulph was elected abbot of Buildwas. He ruled the monastery until 1187. It was during this time that the abbey's impressive stone church was completed, together with the monastery's main buildings. The ghost of Ranulph is believed to haunt the ruins today, and has been seen walking around as if he was inspecting the stonework. Witnesses report that he emits a black mist, and at times has been heard singing in Latin. The later half of the 13th century saw wealth pouring into the abbey's coffers. Like many monasteries across England, it obtained much of its income from the sales of fleeces from its flocks of sheep. In fact, it was during this period that one murderous monk is believed to have slain a greedy abbot, causing his spirit to haunt the abbey to this day. According to folklore, this murderous monk stole a small chest of money and buried it in an unknown location along the bank of the River Severn. Numerous times his ghostly spirit has been seen carrying the chest, rushing away from the abbey, where it suddenly disappears. Early in the 1340s, the abbey was hit by an ominous period of further murders and plague. A mysterious cattle disease swept over the local area and decimated livestock numbers, killing hundreds and leaving the rest too sick to give milk. Buildwas, almost overnight, lost most of its revenue, and it led to the ungodly behaviour of the abbot being called into question. One monk was believed to have known that the abbot had sired a child, and was going to make it known to all the monks. But this monk was murdered by the abbot, and his remains chopped up and discarded in a rubbish pit that has never been found. But the abbot would get his comeuppance. The abbot ignored the problem and grew even more persistent in his pursuit of rent. This angered the local farmers. However, the dispute was eventually calmed when church officials were sent to Buildwas. There was peace for a time, until the following year, when the crops failed and the abbot's actions once again would come into question. With no crops and the country still in the grips of a cattle disease, many peasant farmers left their land in search of work further afield, or died, leaving acres of abandoned land. This was a real crisis and put immense pressure on the peasants left behind. The abbot refused to acknowledge these serious economic problems. He had no pity for the peasants and insisted that the abbey should collect the full taxes from abbey lands, even if empty. He said he expected full rents and refused to allow any remission of fines or fees. Local peasants expressed their concern and found a voice in a junior monk, by the name of Thomas Tonge. He sympathised with the peasants and certainly wanted the abbot to address the growing issue, but he also disliked the abbot on a personal level and saw an opportunity to challenge his leadership by becoming the peasants' voice. Soon enough, a meeting between the two men was arranged to discuss the growing dissent and the overall economic situation. The meeting was an unpleasant affair, with the two men quickly losing their tempers. As the argument raised and insults were thrown, something in Thomas Tonge snapped and he stabbed the abbot to death. It is not known whether this was a premeditated act or a moment of madness, but the whole abbey was stunned by the events. The Book of Medieval Monasteries of Great Britain includes this passage. In 1342, the abbot was murdered by one of his own brethren, Thomas Tonge. Tonge managed to evade arrest and later had the audacity to petition for reinstatement to the Cistercian order. Whatever happened to Thomas, it appears he wasn't punished too harshly, perhaps because of his status as a man of the cloth, and was even able to rejoin the order after some time. A new abbot was appointed who was compassionate to the troubles of the peasantry, and so the rent situation was resolved. However, this wasn't the end of the strife, as 5 years later the Black Death would strike the country, killing many in Shropshire and further plummeting the value of the abbey's estates. But perhaps worst of all was that Thomas Tonge returned after completing his pilgrimage, and was therefore technically forgiven in the eyes of God, and so was free to rejoin the order. The monks reluctantly welcomed Tonge back to the abbey. However, his return seemed to be too much for the spirit of the former abbot. After being dead for 5 years, the former abbot's ghost was risen. Soon he would be seen again wandering the abbey's grounds, unhappy at his killer's return. His wandering ghost was a nightly occurrence, and many of the younger monks suggested he was searching for Thomas Tonge. Understandably, given this news, Tonge fled the monastery. However, this didn't give his victim rest, as the abbot's spirit is still reported to wander the crumbling ruins of Buildwas Abbey. Some report feeling an overwhelming sense of calm upon seeing his spirit. In the 1980s, he was reported a number of times as walking alongside another eerie monk, who also gives off a calming presence. The abbey was dissolved in the 1530s, and since then thousands of people have visited the site, with numerous sightings of ghosts, most of which are monks, but the spirit of a dog has also been seen running around the ruins, and perhaps more bizarrely, the ghost of a Roman soldier has been seen standing in the corner of the chapter house. Skeptics deny any possibility of Buildwas Abbey being haunted, stating there is no physical proof and only witness statements which might be misinterpreted natural phenomenon or outright falsehoods for financial gain. But despite what skeptics say, sightings of ghosts continue to be reported, and who knows what you might see the next time you visit Buildwas Abbey.